Good evening, everyone. So glad that you came out tonight to be a part of the Salt River Christian Fellowship meeting. I've been looking forward to this particular session for quite a long time now. I've had a chance to see my old friend Ernie Perry. We went to college together. We won't tell you when, but it was some time ago. And also glad to have his brother Chuck here as well. And you know, before we started wearing masks, and you couldn't tell anybody with us because of masks, it was kind of always that way with Chuck because he didn't have a mask, he just had a camera in front of him. Every time I ever saw him at all the conventions, it had to be Chuck, the guy with the camera face, you know. We're so glad to have them here. I know that many of you know their parents, E. Paul and Mary, and they were always a big part of the fellowship in the times that they could. And so we thought it would be fun to have them come and talk about leaving a legacy. And so we're looking forward to these guys after June leads us in some music in just a few minutes. I'd like to pray. So without further ado, I'm letting you know, some of you maybe have friends or whatever who try to watch this live on Facebook. We don't get much of a signal out here. So I'm really thankful that the church here said, hey, we'll just record it for you. So it won't show up until tomorrow, maybe on Facebook, but it will be on the Salt River Facebook page. Not live, but probably better than it would have been if it had been live. So we're looking forward to that. June, come lead us in some worship, and then the Perrys will come and speak, and then we'll have our business meeting after.
What a day, Lord, it's day. But my brother and I, our heritage, we were born in the Christian church. We're very proud of that heritage and restoration. I am privileged to preach at the Indian Creek Christian Church in Harrison County, right outside Cincinnati, about 6 miles out in the country. It is the oldest independent Christian church in America. Considered the Cane Ridge Revival of 1801 as the beginnings of the Christian church. Indian Creek was started in 1803. For those of you who know your Restoration Movement history, it was one of the original 13 churches of the Springfield Presbytery. And it is the oldest existing independent Christian church in America, and I'm privileged to preach there, and it literally is on Indian Creek. But our Perry heritage goes to a place on Indian Creek in Burley, Kentucky, outside Lawrenceburg. This is our family roots right here. The house is still barely standing there on Indian Creek. Just right down the road, about 4 miles from the Corinth Christian Church. This is where my dad was carried by his older sister. He was less than a year old. And Sarah Alice Perry Cooper carried him to that house. That's where they moved. Sarah Alice is Alan Cooper and Terry Cooper and Will Cooper's grandmother. I'm very thankful that my cousin Jerry has been able to keep that house in the family. And about once every couple of years, I'll go up on that hill and pray and remember being there, playing as a little kid and visiting my grandfather. Granddaddy Perry never had running water or electricity until they moved him off of that hill around 1964. We moved him to Alton Station, Kentucky. And he lived there at age 84. And the first time he ever had running water, electricity, on a little trailer there at Alton Station. He died when I was in the 6th grade. He was still missing. But Jerry, thank you for keeping that Perry home place in the family. He was able to take all my kids and grandkids there last fall right before the weather changed. And to introduce all my kids to their roots. Dad was raised poor. Granddaddy Perry was a farmer, and there's a lot of rocks in that section of Anderson County in the chair. And Dad said that they thought they were rich. He thought they were rich as a little boy when once a year they'd take a tobacco crop into Lawrenceburg and sell it and make $100. Dad said, I thought we were rich, and that was the one time a year he got an ice cream cone on the way home. Christmas present might consist of a banana or a piece of candy. And Dad went to a one-room school in Greensboro, Kentucky. They rode a horse or walked. And but Dad said we didn't know we were poor. No. And he went to the Navy. He got out of the Navy. He went to work at the thread factory there in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. That's where he met Mom. But when he was a little boy, for the most part, the Perry family did not attend church. Granddaddy Perry and his wife, Mary Briscoe Perry, they were Christians, but they didn't attend church. Dad, as a little boy, started walking about 4 miles to the Corinth Church. It's about 4 miles, is it, Jerry?
Probably
About 3. And C. Marion Rayleigh was the minister of the church that influenced my dad to become a Christian and later would mentor my dad after he was married, mentored him to be a Sunday school superintendent, teach Sunday school and so forth, and influenced Dad to pack up his wife and his little boy, Charles Allen, to go to Kentucky Christian College. In 1955, Dad graduated with straight A's. He only had an 8th grade education. Mom had less than that. Matter of fact, Dad completed his GED at the Pritchard School in Grayson. He completed it 1 week after he got his college degree from Kentucky Christian. But he was the first graduate to make straight A's. And he drove back and forth every weekend, either to preach at Pleasant Hill or Mayo. And my brother Chuck can tell you more stories, but you got sick every weekend. It was really hard in those days, and you got sick every time. Our first home place that I was born into was there at Alton Station. And because it was out in a rural area, we didn't have running water. We didn't have electricity. But Mom in those days would still host evangelists and revival speakers. We had an outhouse. We moved to Chapman, Kentucky, where Dad became the preacher. And we thought we'd gone uptown because we had a parsonage with electricity and running water. And that's where I lived, age 2 through the first grade. And to me, Chapman was like Mayberry. It really was. And but that's where I learned about ministry. Remember the days of revivals. And in those days, we all attended the area revivals. And Mom and Dad weren't much into babysitters, so I went to all the revivals. And that's also when I was introduced to the Salt River Youth Rally. I was just a little kid. I remember we packed out youth rallies, and Chuck was in high school in those days. Dad was one of the ministers that was influential in getting our camp from Camp Bingham to start Camp Calvary. Dad was one of the leaders that got that going. And tonight, my driver is a Rob Webb. If you raise your hand, Rob. He was one of the elders when I was on Preacher Broadway Christian in Lexington. He married a girl that Gary and I went to camp with, Deb Moore. Deb's, and you may remember Kay Moore. She went to camp with my brother Chuck and Joe Paul Hatchett and that bunch. But Vernon, their dad, Vernon Moore, was one of the leaders of the church in Springfield. He was very influential in getting Camp Calvary started. And Rob is the one who drew up the blueprints for the house there at Camp Calvary, where my cousin, Alan Cooper, is camp manager. But in the days of Chapman, that's all we did was ministry. We lived there at the parsonage. And we did all the revivals. How many of you remember coming to the Chapman Christian Church for the big revival we had with John W. Jones and the singing midget Lowell Mason? How many of y'all remember coming to that? Yeah. We packed that church out every night. And you can't say midget anymore, but that's how he advertised himself. That's the truth. And then we moved to Indiana, and there I was 2nd through 8th grade, but we made a lot of trips back to Kentucky, because that's where the kinfolk were. We still had the home place there at Alton Station. We did work on the house. We got at the ranch. But I came back and stayed with relatives and uncles and aunts and so forth. And but a lot of trips were made. And, Deuteronomy 6 says, parents, teach your kids every opportunity you have. You walk down the road and you lie down. And so a lot of trips, just me and Dad had a lot of talks with Dad. Dad was a very, very busy minister all his years. He never had a church secretary. He didn't get a youth minister until I was in college, and that was Ron Whitaker at Henry Christian. And Dad, he was the one that had to run the mimeograph and do all that. He was a caller. He kept really crazy hours. Most of the time he'd go to bed at 2 or 3 in the morning. But as busy as Dad was, he had time for his boys. He went to all the ball games. He even coached them. And he was a hard worker. Every year until we moved to Henry County, because we didn't have the property, he grew a garden. Mom did the canning. Dad changed his own oil on his cars. He never had ramps until I was in college. We would use concrete block and 2x6s and pull the car up on that. You should have Chuck will tell you that one of the biggest fights he and Dad got into was trying to remove a muffler off the bottom of the car. And Dad says, "Hit it harder." And Chuck says, "I'm hitting it as hard as I can. I hit it harder." Dad was very frugal. He was raised poor, and so he was very frugal. And Chuck and I still are amazed when we finally got into their finances and they go into the nursing homes of how much money Dad had saved. Pretty much a lower middle class income, because Dad always preached at smaller churches. But we never went without. Before I was in the 8th grade, I'd seen a lot of the United States a lot of my friends never got to see until they were over adults. California, Mexico, we had kinfolk in California, New York City, went to New York World's Fair in, what was that, 62? Washington, D.C., Florida, and still to this day, though Dad has Alzheimer's, we can still bring up memories from vacations. And in fact, he might be able to remember, and he would say to you, "What do you think of 2 boys that would push their dad off of a diving board in Austin, Texas, push him into the deep end, and he can't swim? What do you think of that?" Oh, how we made memories. But I'll say this. Dad loved the church. He loved church. He loved the people of the church. He loved Jesus. One of the things I learned from Dad was he always spent time with God alone. I remember sometimes we had to get up really early to go someplace. And I remember even one time when I was 16, he had me drive. Why? So he could do his daily devotions. And he would read to me while I drove the daily bread, his scripture, and then he would pray while I drive. Dad lost count probably how many times he read his Bible through. And I want to say this. I want to thank the Salt River Men's Fellowship. You're all the ones who brought us back from Indiana to Kentucky to start Henry Christian. You paid Dad's salary. Thank your influence for over Camp Calvary. There's still some of us kids that are still close today that love one another because of Camp Calvary. As a matter of fact, just 3 weeks ago before I got sick, I met up with one of my camp buddies, Marty Pinkston. He was the song leader for the youth rally. I was the piano player. We ran around, did things together, showbill days. And then he and I met up for lunch just 3 weeks ago at Cliffside in Frankfurt, one of my favorite childhood places that Dad would take us. There's still a number of us who are close because of Camp Calvary, youth rallies. I will say this, Dad made me go with him when I was in high school to the Salt River Men's Fellowship, and I didn't like it. But I still admire a lot of those men and the influence they had. And I dare to say that I stand before you today a minister because of the influence of the Salt River Men's Fellowship, camp, and youth rallies in my life, and many others that are preaching the gospel today because of your ministry. I just want to say thank you.
I saw you had here tonight, some of the churches, we had that tonight. Don't know what this is. This is a hymn book. Okay, and so we're doing legacy, okay, on this, and they actually have notes in there, and you can actually sing parts. And anybody know what this is? This is a King James version of the Bible. And you remember the evangelists that went through and said that all Bibles should be what? Red. So this is a red King James version. Okay. Now then, anybody know what this is? This is a seersucker suit. It was top fashion. Anyway, this is one of my dad's here. Now, anybody else know what this is? on the wall of the house. Okay. Paul said to Timothy, those things which you have heard of me among many witnesses, then you share that on to others so that they in turn will pass that on. And so really what this tonight, what we're all about is that having heard individuals like C. Mary Brayley and Brother Graham and others who poured into the lives of people and gave them the chance. One of the proud things that we are about Salt River events and the fellowship down here is the Preacher Boy contest and others. We've got so many churches now that are so big that they can't have somebody to try or do or mess up. And they can't get that first chance, that first opportunity. Now, and this is the area here where we got our first opportunity. That's where we cut our teeth. Now, one of the reasons, Dad went into the ministry, and one of his first sermons was at Corinth. And so there's some folks still around. I'll tell you about this. I was probably 2.5, 3, maybe going on 4. Dad was preaching his first sermon, and as some of the people in Corinth and family members used to say, Charles Allen was before the term, a strong-willed child. and so on one occasion, as I was strong-willed, Dad was preaching, she took me to the basement. And in the basement, you probably heard the hymns and all share about this, but anyway, Mom is laying down, well, this wasn't heard, but she was laying down the law, and Dad was preaching, and he run out of sermon material. And Mom was still applying the law, and it was echoing up through the furnace pipes. But I learned my lesson. And then Dad ministered at Pleasant Hill. Now Dad said, remember had those revivals and you filled them up, the church was hot, no air conditioning, and you had the little stage around there. And so they brought all the little kids sit up there, What misery. Child abuse. But I already learned my lesson. And what did Dad say? What did Dad say? You sit there and don't you move, don't you act up, don't you do nothing. And they're like, yes, I mean, 4 years old, sometimes you have to go to the bathroom. I had to, but what did Dad say? Right there in God's house. Well, we didn't have indoor plumbing, so right there, I left that night with a wet spot. Although some of the ladies of the church knew the Robert Charles Allen go out on the floor. No, I ain't going out. Well, now I'm talking about some of the things, learning those things as at 4 years, later when we went on to Fairview. Now sometimes there's a little commotion going on the outside, maybe a little running, carrying on, and Mom would come to the door and holler, Charles Allen, are you out there running? Well, she knew I wasn't running. She gonna beat the tar out of me. I knew not to run, but you see, that was a little sermon to all those other little pagans out there that was running, And so sometimes you got the experience. And so, well, I got a tie on tonight, and my brother doesn't. You wonder why? There's some lessons. Now, my Aunt Bug at Willersburg, look at them preachers. They don't even know how to dress. Look at them. And then the Lord's house. Some of y'all remember the old days when you tried to put on your best. Now, the bad thing about that was sometimes you put on your Sunday clothes and you wore it to church. And then when you got home, you took your Sunday clothes off and you didn't think about it anymore. more. And you didn't do the gospel only on Sundays. Whatever we were needs to be done. So, in honor tonight, and don't this movie to my mama, because I'm sick and tired of some of this stuff. All righty, so, yeah. Now, there's an insight. Mark tells us in his gospel that there was an occasion when all the disciples forsook Jesus and fled, and the mob was around, and there was a kid, just a sort of linen cloth there. And he grabbed it out and grabbed him, and the scripture says that kid run off naked. Who was that kid? I think it's John Mark. He's telling about some of his life experiences. He was close and whatever. You know, and that's some of the things, you know. Jesus said sometimes a prophet is not without honor in their own country. Because sometimes people knew us or them when they were this or that. And that wasn't always the snuff. Yes, it's true. I did hang Ernie Wayne upside down by his heels in the tree at Chaplain out by the lake. But there's a reason for that from Alton Station, but that's another story. Yes. And if you were married by Dad at the parsonage at Chaplain, you know, just a marriage and couple and a couple of witnesses, you had a full package. I saw that all of our garbage was tied to the back of your car. And your windows and all that. You got a whole full wedding package. And so some of those remember the kids. When Dad learned to work in jobs and those who had paid. See, some of those guys, who here tonight's been on a mission trip with me? Or others, we've been on mission trips together. So some people have. I appreciate it. Ray was former executive director at Mission Journeys. I appreciate here tonight our own Wayne King is here. He's a new co-director on that. Of course, Donnie's been with me on other trips and managed. You see, some of those principles I learned from guys who taught me how to work. There were some of you don't know how to do it. Man, what's wrong with you? I'm good. And the others said, well, here, this is how we do it. With Don Collin, we loaded hay at my moonlight after school. And in fact, when Dad went to Indiana, Helen Collin said, Paul, well, you can go on to Indiana, but you can't take that Charles. He's just now becoming a good worker. And I'll miss him. You go on. So sometimes some of the lessons go. Here, what did we learn? Good churches with hospitality. In the old days when you didn't pay the preacher much, at least you fed him. And you fed him in your house. And all the friendships, the love, the compassion, the ministry that went on there. Little kids like us, knowing and seeing people. The gift of hospitality, like I already said, my mom. Many evangelists came to our house and stayed. Welcome. In addition to our churches and hospitality, I think one of the strong suits were back in the old days, we had Vacation Bible School for 2 weeks. My mom was one of the best Vacation Bible School directors in the world. Y'all know I have used Vacation Bible School all over the world. And even now, it is one of the best messages and means of teaching going on Haiti, Ethiopia, Jamaica, or whatever. Also, those old revivals. You had a revival like this? Some of that in a soccer field in the middle of Haiti, and the whole community coming out and building on here and preaching the gospel and sharing, doing whatever those revivals. And then you're sitting in those Sunday school classes and other we taught you to do them. Say, where did I? You see, Central Kentucky. So all these churches here became standards by which, growing with the camp. Later, after the first week at Camp Calvary, I was a junior counselor. The second week was intermediate, and the third week I was a senior camp. You know, I never won camper of the week. Now, on one occasion, Joe Paul Patchett, my cousin, minister, Joe Paul and I and another guy was in the running, and while they were in the faculty meeting voting on the camper, someone came in and called Joe Paul and I short-sheeted the dean's vote. We were automatically, so we never won that, but both of us wound up being preachers. I don't know what that says or anymore. So, but camps, Lord used me to help establish a camp in Fleming County, Barbados, use, St. Vincent, others, teaching and seeing those people going on. So camping and others prepared us for those many fields of Christian service. So we owe this to you and our roots. I asked you some of the questions who did impacted or in your story, when you tell your story, who talked to you about Jesus? Who gave you that first opportunity? Said, you can do this, you can step up. We're looking for ministers, and I'm just going to give this, in my childhood or reflect back, I remember standing by my Uncle Stanley and my Aunt Jane, next to my same age, Connie Sue. And Earl Hume is leading the songs, Johnny's dad, and Corrine Herman, Perry Herman is playing the piano. And they're playing the same, Stepping in the Light. How beautiful to walk in the steps of the Savior, stepping in the light. That's really what we're all about, is introducing people to the light of the world. Whether it's through in Haiti or others, but through darkness in our own universities, in our own places, to how do we share Jesus? So, Salt River continue to be salt and light, and just, it's not something that we're bragging about. The only thing we're here today is to share that somebody, someplace, of all the things made a difference, and anything that we're only reflected light of God's goodness and His grace. And so our commitment and ask of you is that which you've seen, heard, you testify with that of faithful witnesses. Then you teach others and prepare them for them that they might teach others. And then one day you will hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I'll make thee ruler over me. And then thou rejoice over me. God bless you.
Aaron and Chuck, thank you guys very much for that story, those stories, and the legacy that your parents started with you, but we know is also being handed down to your kids. I was the first Christian in my family, and I praise the Lord that they're all Christians now, that they weren't. But my wife and I, Daphne over here, we have two boys, and they've both been involved in church ministry. One is still on staff at Crossroads in Evansville, and they are our legacy. But we hope that there's a legacy beyond them, because we've been able to do what it says in 2 Timothy 2:2 that Chuck told us about. We've invested in others who will pass it on to others who will give it to us.
It's so important to leave a legacy. As a father myself, I cherish the time I spend with my kids, try to teach them all the lessons. Not the lessons that I did in my life, but the stuff that's from the Bible, and I'm like, this is what you need to know. So it is very important to leave a legacy, so thank you so much. And Ernie, I felt the same way when I first came to the fellowship meetings. I hated it, but I was young. But now president, and so and glad to be a part of the work here at Salt River. Also like to thank Scott and the fine people here at Shiloh for everything you've done tonight, and for hosting. And thank everybody else for coming. We're going to try to hit some of this stuff and get back here for the dessert, because I already hear your all stomachs growling. So I know how it is. Billy. 36. We have 36 here in attendance. And we also like to give some instructions on offering. Normally we pass it around, but of course things are all different. There are offering plates at each exit. You can drop your donation in at that time in any of those plates, and we'll get that collected. We got the minutes from the April 2021 meeting. Oh, there you go. Do you want to read those out?
Last month's meeting was at Biggs Mill Christian Church on April 19, 2021. Salt River Christian Fellowship met at Biggs Mill Christian Church on April 19, 2021 with 36 in attendance. Brother Tim welcomed everyone and had the opening prayer. Brother Ronnie and Penny, the host minister, led the song service. The program of the evening was a message from Marcia Mitchell of the Wake Ministries. This organization is our salt project for the Springs. This ministry is located in Shiloh, Kentucky, and assists many people in food, shelter, and many other needs. President Adam Sayre called the business meeting to order. The minutes of the previous meeting were read and approved with the financial report. A vote was taken and passed on the bylaw changes discussed last month of Article 2. Discussion about the assisting and flood recovery in Irving, Kentucky, and Tim announced making a possible minister seminar in the fall. In the near future, the fellowship will be looking about a new church plan. Next month's meeting would be at Shiloh Christian Church on May the 17th, 2021.
Michael, you gave everybody a treasury report. If you did not get one of those treasury reports, just make sure you see Michael after service. And
there's some back there in the back.
Oh, didn't know if you did that. And they are at the exits as well. You can pick one up. Contact information or anything like that. You can see Tim or I, and we'll make sure we get that to you. Or you can always meet Michael in the parking lot in a nice way.
So you put in that last part.
Yeah, put in that last part. If you read the newsletter, there was a possibility of talking about the Equality Act tonight. Unfortunately, Lance is still recovering from his sickness. He did come down with some pneumonia, so he is coughing and really worn out. But he's still doing stuff at church, but he's not with us tonight. What he's done is, on behalf of the fellowship, he's done a lot of research on what the churches within the fellowship can do if this Equality Act is passed and how we can protect ourselves. And he's gotten a lot of information that we want to present to you all. And so we will postpone that until the next fellowship meeting when Lance is here to do all that. And now, as I say that, I don't want you to think that as he's talking, you have to write all this stuff down really fast. We will get that information out to the churches after he gives his presentation, so you don't have to worry about that. We'll make sure everybody gets that. We did talk about the minister's luncheon. We got planned for the fall. We do have a projected date of August 26th, so you can go ahead and pencil that in on the calendar. Don't schedule anything else. This will be a good afternoon where we can get together as ministers within the fellowship. And Ken Idleman will be our main speaker for that morning. And so it should be a great time of fellowship and also a great time of growing with one another as well. And so go ahead and pencil that in. There's been talk tonight about the church plant committee. The board of directors have met, and we did toss out some names, possible candidates that we would like to see on the committee board. And Tim has reached out to a lot of these individuals. I'm happy to report that a few of them are interested in coming on board and helping with our search. And so one of them is here tonight. Ivan Spencer has expressed interest in jumping on board. So if you like that idea, make sure he follows through with it. So talk to him about that. We need you, Ivan. But also Jeremy Willis has also expressed interest too. And so, but we didn't want to do all the picking. If there is someone here within the fellowship that has that interest, that has that desire to see a church planted here where God needs it to be, wherever it may be, that we want to give that opportunity to you all to sign up and be a part of that committee. And so at each exit, there is a sign-up sheet. For some reason, if you don't like sign-up sheets, you can also come up and talk to Tim and I personally, and we'll get your information and make sure you're a part of that. If you need to go home and pray about it, definitely do that. Definitely do that. You can always reach out to us, whether on the Facebook page or through personal email or something like that to Tim and I. If God is leading you to be a part of this committee, we want you to be on it. And so that's that. Also, we do want to highlight SALT projects. This is something that's relatively new to the fellowship. Last year we did it for the first time. This year we're continuing it, and we also got it planned for next year. SALT projects we highlight 2 missions for the year. We have a spring and a fall, and our spring SALT project is the Awake Ministries out of Shelbyville. Last month we had a report of everything that they were involved in. They really helped feed the community, but also help with the veterans as well, establish homing and stuff like that, work with young families as well, mom and dad, give them counseling and stuff like that. They also do an addiction recovery as well program. They started with one purpose, and they blossomed to a whole garden full of minister possibilities. And so definitely God has blessed them. But if you would like to help them financially, we are asking people to sign up to be a part of the SALT project and donate $50 to the Awake Ministry. Now, if you can't afford $50, that's fine. We understand that. And you still want to help out, go ahead and help out as best you can. And we'll make sure to present all that money to them at the June meeting, right? The next meeting. Or are you going to?
Actually, yeah, it would be sometime June or July.
Okay, June. We'll make sure we get that. We'll get that total and get that to the Awake Ministries. And then also in the fall, we're going to have a fall SALT project, and that is going to be Crossroads Mission. And the interesting thing is once we selected these 2 missions, Tim has done some research and found out that they both work together. And they both done projects together. So it was pretty fun to realize that. And so, and then in our August meeting, we'll actually hear a presentation from Tim Allen, or Anderson, from Crossroads Missions. He will give us a report of everything that they are involved in. Yeah, that wasn't right. Close.
Trying to get Tim Allen, but he cost me
Yeah, filming and everything, it's hard. But definitely we want to ask you all, definitely consider being a part of the SALT project. It's never too late. It's never too late to sign up for that and help out these missions. And also, if your church is interested in getting involved in any of these missions, just see Tim and I, let us know, and we'll get all that contact information to you so that you can talk to your church about how you all can get involved in these. That is one of the purposes of the SALT project, is to highlight these missions that some of us may not know about, and to hear what they're doing. And it's something that some of you all might want to get involved in. And so it's our way of highlighting them. A couple more things. I'd like to ask a prayer request for everybody in here. We're going to say a word of prayer, actually. But our former executive director, Barry Thornton, is in need of our prayers. His Parkinson's has advanced, and his health is in pretty bad shape. Billy Shiloh took him to a doctor's appointment and noticed a big change in Barry. And he will have a follow-up doctor appointment in July. And so we're just asking everybody, all the churches, go ahead and put him on your prayer list and make an announcement and let everybody know that they need to be praying for him. And last but not least, our next meeting will be June 21st. Go ahead and mark that in your calendar. It will be at the Church of the Crossroads. They now have a building of their own, and they're now worshiping inside there. So I want to challenge each church here tonight to bring a crowd. This is our latest church plant in Salt River area. And so let's come out and show good support and bring a big crowd out to check out the building. I'm sure John and the people there will give you a tour if you want one. So next meeting will be at Church of the Crossroads. And Ken Idleman will actually be our speaker that evening. Ken is involved with the Solomon Foundation, but he's been a minister for years. So definitely come out and make plans to attend that meeting. Let's see what church can bring the biggest crowd, all right? So at this time...
Does that count the weight or just...
You know what? We'll measure both. We'll measure the amount and then weight. Are you going to bring the scale?
And the scale.
All right. Once again, thank you all so much for coming out. Hopefully I didn't take up too much of your time. If you have any questions, please see me or Tim with any kind of information. If you have something going on in your church and you'd like it to be announced, Tim and I would love to get that on Facebook and share that as much as possible to everybody so that they know what's going on in the area.